The Renaissance, or rebirth, began in Florence, Italy, in the late Middle Ages, then spread to the rest of Europe. The Renaissance spanned 250 years, from 1350 to 1600, a time that revolutionized the arts, education, and government. Politically, the Renaissance gave birth to the monarchy and diplomacy. With the collapse of feudalism, Europe was divided with hundreds of independent states. Monarchs, kings and queens with supreme rule, in France, England, and Spain, responded to the chaos in Europe by consolidating their power into nations. Often these alliances were the result of marriages. The Renaissance monarchy chose secular social governance, challenging the influence of the Pope, which moved towards separation of church and state. Each monarchy left a legacy. The stories of monarchs in France, England, and Spain are permanently linked with alliances, conflicts, and blood. Francis I, France's first Renaissance prince, brought the Renaissance to France, collecting masterpieces like the Mona Lisa that later established France as a cultural capital. Francis I was not in the direct line of succession. Francis grew up in the court of his uncle, King Louis XII. At age 4, he became the Dauphin, heir to the French throne. At age 11, he was engaged to Louis's daughter, Claude de France, and finally married at age 19 in 1514, then was crowned in 1515 at age 20. Prior to becoming king, Francis distinguished himself on the battlefield in the Italian Wars, a war between France and Spain for control of Italy. Francis led an army into Italy and took Milan, and Pope Leo X gave him Parma and Piacenza. The ongoing rivalry with Charles I of Spain escalated when Charles I was elected Holy Roman Emperor. Francis I asked Henry VIII to go to war with Spain, but Henry refused. With no European allies, Francis allied with Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. After seeing Italy's art and architecture, Francis I became a patron and collector of the arts, establishing the King's Collection, which can be viewed today in the Louvre in Paris. Devoted to architecture, he invited Italian artists to the French court, including Leonardo da Vinci, who died in his arms, to adorn palaces. Francis I established French as the national language. He read and collected books for the National Library. He also established the law that required the church to keep vital records of birth, marriage, and death. Francis chose the salamander as his emblem. Salamanders can live in fire without being consumed, but also extinguish fire due to their exceptional coldness of their body. His motto was, "I live among it and extinguish it." In response to the Italian Wars, Francis signed the famous Accordo of Bologna with Pope Leo X that stated the Catholic Church in France came under direct control of the French crown. He flip-flopped support and opposition to Protestantism, eventually claiming Protestantism is a threat to the civil society. Francis I's legacy is mixed. His cultural advances require a huge expense, but they established Paris as a cultural center to rival Florence. Francis I died in 1547 and was succeeded by his second son, Henry II. When you look at the timeline, you see the history of the monarchy in France, England, and Spain are all linked forever by alliances, battles, and blood.